Hi ma'am, good day. My name is Cheryl Torre Amogue. So, in my research, I've choose in poverty. So, poverty is one of the most problem that we are facing right now or sa una pa. Nahangtod ko man, sinata igapa na tol. Lalo na ko man sa pandemic. So, grabe kalisud. So, ang poverty siya murag mintaas siya kay tungod sa there are so many conflicts, there are so many issues that we are suffering right now. So one of these is a poverty. So having poverty is unfair, unethical, and dangerous. So poverty grabe gid siya kumbaga maka effect sa ato panginabuhi, sa ato life. So the Philippines should abolish poverty because its people deserve to be free of it. Poverty in Philippines is one of the most serious problems that the government must deal with. So, ang poverty gid siya, ang pinakalisod na ang gobyerno gid siya ang mutabang kung ano masolusyonan ang problema sa kalisod. So, in relation to its nature, poverty in Philippines arose from the rapid population growth in a country. The effects of it are very visible in nature. Poverty causes many Filipinos to not pursue their educations. Others seems to be contented of their lives as a poor. Many parents can't afford to send their children to school because of the financial problem. The majority who are affected of this problem are those who are living in the mountain areas because some of them are living miles away from school. Poverty and violence against children. So, street children, juvenile justice, and violences. In case, poor, disadvantaged, and marginalized children are more vulnerable to violences. Poverty and family or community breakdown can force them for their homes and lead them to live on the street. In case they become involved in vagrant petty crime and substance abuse. So in the Philippines, these children are often apprehended without a warrant and detained without access to social worker for long periods. So they are also vulnerable to torture and ill treatment. Despite of progress, children across the Philippines continue to face barriers to the full realization of their rights, affecting their long-term well-being and development. High levels of inequality by armed conflict and natural disaster in parts of the country mean the most vulnerable is girls and boys suffer proportionately. So the executive summary. So this report represents a summary of the findings from larger situation analysis, an extensive research study into the situation of children in the Philippines. It aims to shed light on a progress toward children's rights across the country and to inform future policy and programs intervention for girls and boys. So ang mga batay sa makasinating ginang kalisod kay tungod sa poverty, violence against children sa Philippines. So so overview situation analysis is the situation analysis highlights gaps in fulfillment of children's rights across different sectors in the Philippines and explore the impact on their ability to develop and thrive. So research for the situation analysis was conducted within 2 KPSS. So assessment: to what extent do the children in the Philippines meet international development larger and child rights standards? So researcher examined how children in the Philippines were progressing across a range of indicators within the areas of health, nutrition, water, sanitation, and hygiene, education, children protection, and social protection. Then compare this outcome to international development targets and rights standard for the children, including the Sustainable Development Goals and Convention on the Rights of the Child. So, allowing them to identify gaps in realization of children's rights across the country. So, may rights gap po ng children. So, next is analysis. Researcher then work to analyze the immediate underlying and structural causes of these gaps and identify the barriers preventing children from fully realizing their rights. This analysis was conducted according to key determinant identified as a critical to achieving result for children grouped into the categories enabling environment, supply, demand, and quality. So, overview of the Philippines. So, the population. The Philippines is the 12th most populated country in the world and archipelago of 7,107 islands. It has 198 million people and is characterized by high numbers of children. So, ang mga problema. In 2010, almost 40% of population was under 18. So, rapid urbanization, kaduha na problema. The proportion of the population living in the urban areas is projected to increase from around 27% in 1950 to 56% in 2050. Third, ethnic diversity. There are estimated 40 to 17 million indigenous people from 110 ethno-linguistic groups in the Philippines. Around 92% of people are Christians, with the most of the countries 5% Muslim population based on the island of Mindanao. So, the economic context. The Philippines is a lower middle income country with the 10th fastest growing economy in the world. Recent economic advance, however, have been marked by slow human development. In 2016, the Philippines ranked 116 out of 188 countries on the Human Development Index, lagging behind regional neighbors. Persistence poverty. Poverty levels remain fairly high and are actually increasing the areas such as ARMM, slow and uneven growth. Poverty rates vary significantly across the country, from 3.9% in the National Capital Region (NCR) to 53.7% in an autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao. So, next is a political context. The Philippines is a democratic republic headed by a president. Heavily decentralized, it is governed through 17 administrative regions made up province, cities, municipalities, and barangays. These local government units, or LGU, raise taxes, enact legislation, and deliver service. In the recent years, there have been efforts to move the country towards a federalist government. First, sa political context is inequality. Around 50 to 70% of politicians in the Philippines are associated with a dynasty, concentrating power among a few families and perpetuating inequality. Second, corruption. In 2017, the Philippines scored 34 on a Transparency International Corruption Perception Index, indicate a serious level of corruption. Third, capacity gaps in local government. So, many LGUs struggle to raise revenue, manage their financial resources, and to plan, budget, and implement the programs effectively. So, rest, disaster, and conflicts. So, in the Philippines has been heavily affected by natural disasters and conflicts, which have been devastated communities and full poverty. So, first is in the risk, disaster, and conflicts is natural disaster. The Philippines is prone to typhoon, flooding, drought, rain-induced landslide, volcanic eruptions, storm surge, and earthquakes. So, between 2000 to 2017, There are 273 disasters caused by a natural hazard. Second, climate changes. So, the Philippines is ranked among the top 5 countries in the world in terms of vulnerable to climate change. With the rising sea levels, mean temperature and storm surges recorded in the recent years. Third, conflict. The southern Philippines, particular ERMM, has had complex history of ethnic and armed conflicts of the past decade. So, this has severe consequences for the children, including death, injury, displacement, sexual violence, and recruit in armed forces. So, the picture show, as you can see, a woman holds her child amid the rubble and the aftermath of a Typhoon Haiyan in November 2013. So, makita mo ang inahan gakugo sa iya bata sa kay affected sila ng bagyo. So, next, sa second picture sa obos, makita isab na children stand in the river that has dried up due to severe drought of Mama sa pano Maguindanao. So, tungod sa climate changes ini siya, resulta ng climate changes naman ya, dried na ang river. So, kaluoy sa bintawan sa mga bata. So, next is findings. Kung ano findings? The situation analysis identified a range of gaps in the fulfillment of children's rights across all the sector in the Philippines. It has also found distinct disparities in children's progress towards meaning, international development, and rights standards according to social protection. So, kinahanglan sa protection and mga children. It's a very important matter. So, despite of rapid economic growth and overall declining rates of poverty in recent years, the situation remains extremely challenging for children in the Philippines. So, the stark disparities were found not on between areas of the country but across different groups of population. In 2019, girls and boys from rural countries, low-educated households, and larger families were more likely to be living in poverty. So, nakita nila ng 2019, good mga bata na mga wala ma-educar o sa iba na yaminyo na ng bata pa. So, similarity, while there is limited data available, children from marginalized groups including street children, children from indigenous community, children with disabilities, appear more likely to be deprived of service, including access to school, to experience social discrimination, and to live in poverty. So, ang mga bata ng mga indigenous people, maka-experience ng mga discrimination, kaya tungkol sa kalisod. So, significance rates of children poverty. 31% of children are living below the basic need of poverty line nationality. 63.1% in ARMM. So, child poverty rates vary significantly and are very high in some region. So, yeah. Next is the health. The Philippines has made progress in reducing child mortality over past decades. Between 1990 to 2015, deaths of the infants under 1 year decreased from 41 to 21 per 1,000 live births, while the number of children who died before the age of 5 dropped from 59 to 27 per 1,000 live births. So, children mortality rates, however, are significantly higher in rural areas are in ERMM. So, yan talaga sa ERMM. And huge effort will be required to meet national targets. So, worryingly, childhood immunization rates are low and in some cases, declined in the Philippines between 2013 to 2015. And the routine immunization coverage rate dropped to 89% to around 62%. And low immunization rates contributed to increased incidence of a vaccine-preventable disease such as rubella in 2011, measles in 2014, and there are also significant immunization across the country. So, lalo na kumain sa pandemic. So, yes, again, yan ang injection bitaw. Bakuna para sa tanan. So, kailangan kita magpabakuna kita para ma-secure na nato health. So, rising rates of teen fertility, an increase from 49 in 1997 to 59.2 births per 1,000 women aged 15 to 19 years in 2015. So, damo saban mga bata pa na yung anak na amo yun, high rapid growth ng population, amo sabihin isa sa makapapobre sa ato kuan country. So next is makita niyo sa law of declining immunization coverage. So makita niyo immunize only 62% childhood immunization coverage decline in the childhood vaccination coverage. So, isagad mo dili pagpabaksin. So, next is the nutrition. So, in the Philippines, has very high level of stunting and underweight. So, among children under 5-year-old, which have actually increased in recent years, marking a worrying reversal of overall downward trends in past decades. So, childhood stunting is most higher in ERMM and falls considerable short of the regional average of East Asia and Pacific. So, childhood wasting is estimated to affect around 7% of children under 5-year-old in the Philippines. So, 1 in 3 children under the age of 5 in the Philippines is stunted. Almost half of stunted children come from the poorest household compared to only 15% from the wealthiest household. So nutrition isa daw po niya sa problema na kinakaharap ng ating bansa. So, more efforts are needed to implement laws and policy that can protect children's rights. So more efforts are needed to implement laws and policies that can protect children's rights. So, lalo na sa kalisod, yung dapat maka-implement or maka-protect sa mga bata. Water, sanitation, and hygiene. So, although the high proportion of the population in the Philippines does not yet have universal access to safe drinking water, there are also significant disparity by household income and region. So, in 2017, only 80% of the country's poorest household had access to basic drinking water compared to 99% of the wealthiest household. So, kuan yagid mga discrimination kay ang mga kwartahan dan makasinati ng mga madayon na how ini ang kwartahan lan makainom ng limpyo na tubig samantalaan mga pobre dili. So amo yun siya yang good siya sa water, sanitation, and hygiene. So makita niyo ang mga bata, they are smiling, they are happy that there's water. So next is the education. So despite some encouraging progress in recent years, there are still limitations to children access to the education in the Philippines. So, diba, magkalisod gyapon ang education lang ito sa una na mga free tuition. Kung pasalamat ka sa ato president kay gi-open na niya ang free tuition lang sa mga college students. So, damo sa ba niya mga programs na gipan open para sa mga estudyante na kinahanglan na maka-eskwela sila. So, As estimated, 2.85 million children aged 5 to 15 are out of school. So, damo gid ang mga wara magi eskwela. Child protection. So, in the Philippines has relevant forms of violences, including corporal punishment of children at home, and to lesser extent of school, which is driven by social norms around disciplines and bullying. So, yeah, isa bisya sa topic is on child protection. So, high rates of violences against children is 2 in 3 experience violence, physical violence. So, 1 in 4 experience sexual violence. 2 in 5 experience psychological violence. So, 2 in 3 experience peer violence. So, damo na mga violence anya masuffer ng children. So, we need to protect the children. So, we need to help. So, in suggested recommendation, the challenge of moving forward will be on using the findings from situation analysis in a way that makes a difference to our children. So, this means targeting and identifying barriers that prevent girls and boys in the Philippines from fully realizing their rights and drawing on the evidence to inform future policy program intervention for children. So, legal and policy framework. Remove barrier to children and adolescents independent access to service and ensure a new laws of policies are child and gender sensitive. So, bottlenecks in policy and program implementation result in poor and uneven progress towards meeting children's rights in the Philippines. So, next is budgeting finances. Isa yan siya sa part ng suggested recommendation in budgeting and finances. Next is third siya is data collection and use. Also, data collection and use is mandate a lead agency with responsibility for managing and oversight of child-related data and improve freedom of information and open access data. So, amo siya ang data collection and use. So, next is governance and coordination. Improve coordination between governments, agency, and bodies and children-related issues. So, improve the transparency of accountability mechanism in order to tackle corruption and financial mismanagement and to monitor the use of resources for children. So, isasabihin sa part na may recommend, so suggested recommendation. So, next is cultural norms and practices. So, conduct research to better understand the implementation of social norms and practice on children's rights and to guide policies and program to address them. So, yan, socio-cultural norms and practice, yan, pwede siya na ma-recommend. So, supply barriers. Conduct a national review to identify human resources gaps in service of delivery for children and create an incentive system to attract skilled workers to difficult and remote access. So, yun, no? Makita ni the picture shows parents and caregivers have their children vaccinated health in barangay. So, makita niya sa picture. So, yan, di isa. Demand slide barriers. Ensure that the government policies and programs focus on adequate attention on demand side barriers in realization of children's rights. So, isasabihan sa America manin demand side barriers. And next is quality of service. ensure the monitor, evaluation, and reporting mechanism are embedded within the policy development of service delivery. So, the situation analysis of children provides the Philippines with a unique opportunity. So, ang situation analysis of children, makatabang yun siya na research sa to country. By bringing together compelling evidence regarding progress toward children's rights across the country. It highlights areas where the government must now take urgent or action. A strong response is required. So, and every children in the Philippines has the right to grow up healthy, educate, and protected. Enabling environment that help them to meet their potential and lead a fulfilling life. So, collective effort must build on these findings to make changes that have a lasting impact for children and address the inequality that leaves vulnerable girls and boys lagging behind. So, amo yun siya ang topic that situational analysis of children. So, lalo na sa may base in is sa ang topic sa poverty. So, that's all. Thank you.